Hello and welcome back to a new episode of our Reading Circle. My name is Juan Rifo and with my classmates Francisca Alfaro, Gabriel Garcia, Maita Barca, Isidora Barahona, and Francisca Neira, we're going to talk about Jane Eyre. Whether you have watched the film or read the novel, we all know Jane Eyre, especially for multiple reasons. But the main one is how she defined the role of a woman in the 19th century. She showed that a woman could be strong and defiant even when she's supposed to be submissive. Overall, Jane Eyre stands out for its rich character development, emotional intensity, and its groundbreaking portrayal of a woman's quest for self-worth and love. Now, saying that, how is Jane different from one woman of her time, and how her history can influence women of this century?
How is Jane different from women of her time? Jane was different woman of her time because she got independence and self-respect. Women at this time were expected to be submissive and depend on men. She also got intellectual and emotional strength. Women in Victorian era were seems to be with fragile emotions and intellectually inferior to men. She constantly made decisions based on her own decisions and self-respect. Jane also was clear on her position in society. As a woman was difficult, but her value as a human being was determined by her social standing and her moral integrity. She chooses to live a life with integrity rather than complains her values. And how Jane is influence on women of the 20th century. Jane was a figure of feminism, empowerment, and self-worth to women at this time. Also, she is an ideal woman for other women with choice, autonomy, and emotional resilience.
That's very good, Francisca. Now moving on to Isidora, can you tell us more about the characters?
Okay, so as protagonist, we have Jane Eyre, who is resilient, but that's because she had a tough childhood in the rich household. She is also independent and she is determined to forge her own path. She refused to conform to social expectations. On the other hand, we have the love interested in the master of Thornfield, is Edward Rochester. He is a wealthy man, but he is also impulsive, and he has spent a lot of his adult life traveling around Europe, trying to avoid the consequences of mistakes that he made when he was young. And throughout the film, he constantly reminds of that. Other characters that are also important in the story are John Rivers, who helped James run away from Thornfield when he found her in the fields. He is very reserved and he serves as a foil character to Rochester. And by the end, he ends up developing feelings towards Jane, but she rejects him and runs back to Rochester. We also have Mrs. Reed, who is Jane's aunt, his cruel aunt. She is her childhood antagonist who raised her, but in a bad way, we can say, because she resented her a lot because Jane's uncle was more loving and was more kind to her than he was to his own children. We also have Alice Fairfax, who is the housekeeper, and she treated Jane really kindly and respectful when she came to Thornfield to work, but she disapproved of her engagement with Rochester. And for a quick mention of another characters are Bertha Mason, who is Rochester's wife that we get to know like in the middle of the movie. Adele Burns, who is Rochester's illegitimate child, and Helen Burns, who is Jane's closest friends in Lockwood School.
Very good. Now moving on to Maite. What part of language has changed since then?
Well, in the time of Jane Eyre, I mean the Victorian age, the language between social class was so important. I mean, the social class at the top don't talk with the servant class because they are they don't do it, and the servants can speak with the social class at the top, or if they talk with them, they need to be so respectful with them. And but Jane Eyre was different, and she always used her own words. I mean, for example, in a specific like situation, she told Mr. Rochester, "I am not beer, and not ensnares me." And they usually used to use metaphors, and was so common between the people in the same social class, but she told that to Mr. Rochester, who was a social class at the top. But Jane Eyre was always her and used her own words.
Very interesting, Maite. Thank you. Now, I wonder who has a connection that can make between this book and another book or another real life situation?
I have one. Jane has an intense relationship with Mr. Rochester. That couple was about how Jane is manipulated by Rochester, creating an emotional dependency on him. And Rochester makes Jane a vulnerable person because he's overbearing towards her. And Jane often prioritizes Rochester's needs over her own, while Rochester can be controlling or demanding with her. And I think the book Women Who Love Too Much by Robin Norwood has a connection with, because it's about personal experience from toxic relationships and how women can be completely blind for healing an empty man with with emotional immaturity and forgiving all his mistakes for love. And in both texts are codependency because they tend to put their partner's happiness about their own, and which can lead to feelings of inferiority and unworthiness. And also can be self sacrifice because they may tolerate abusive or unhealthy behaviors in the hope of maintaining the connection in that relationship. For example, in the text, we can differ, and he dictates her actions, limit her freedoms, and even isolates her from her friends. And despite recognizing the unhealthy nature of this control, Jane continues to tolerate it because she is deeply in love with him and hopes that he will change his behaviors and all the toxic attitudes.
Very good, Francisca. That was very good.
What I wanted to capture in this ink drawing was the essence of a Jane that never gave up and didn't care if she had to restart her life again. She had to fight for herself, and that's why I like her a lot. She captured a powerful and intense woman. These two scenes that were represented in my draw were totally shocking for me, because I personally think that the image of running through those desert places to escape was a symbol to represent how isolated she was from society. And although she had people, she always was by her own, from very little. And she was looking for a sense of home that later on she found on Rochester. She wanted to belong to something or somebody. And for me, that was the reason that pushed her to find new beginnings. And in the end, she did it. When she returned to Mr. Rochester, a true love history, but not the submissive ones of that age, a true equal love. As you can see in the draw, I draw the image of the Bourne Castle and Jane returning to it as the sun hides to see Rochester again. That is my favorite scene of the movie, and that's why I wanted to draw it and analyze it a bit. And it was something very fun and inspiring to do. I'm the artful artist, and I will always admire the strengthness that Jane had to try new beginnings, and that's why I wanted to picture in my draw. Ever since I watched the movie, I found very interesting how she fought for her own happiness throughout her whole life, and even more in that period of time where women were totally viewed as a complement of men. She had the idea of equality right in her head, and she wanted to create her own path. In this drawing, I took inspiration from two specific scenes of the movie that were the ones where she escaped the castle when she found out that Rochester had a previous wife, and the scenes where she ran from John River to go to the castle again because she realized that Rochester was her true love and found out that the castle was burned.
Gabriel, you nailed it. Thank you very much for your attention. This was our reading circle. I hope you like it.